Alpine claims the A290 is the spiritual successor to the Clio Williams. But are they telling the truth? Well, we took both cars to Wales, to some of our favourite driving roads, to find out. This is what happened next.
So this is the noise that a new Alpine doesn't make. That's full throttle. But I guess we have to get used to it, because this is it. From now on, Alpines are electric. To be fair, they have put an awful lot of effort into making this A290 as much fun as they possibly can. I mean, the looks are subjective. I happen to think it looks pretty cool. I think I prefer the way the regular R5 is styled, because the Alpine just looks as if it's got one too many bolt-on bits. But we'll ignore the looks. Having spent a little bit of time in it now, this thing is really quite good fun to drive, full stop. Not for an EV, but for any car. No, it doesn't make the classically good sounds and noises, and yes, it feels quite heavy. No, I'm not sure I really like the steering that much. It feels a bit artificially meaty, and there's some torque steer, which there's actually quite a lot of torque steer when it comes right down to it. I mean, that's a straight line up a hill that's not particularly bumpy. You can just feel it kind of hunting left, right, left in a classic old torque steer type of way. There's a fair bit of electronics going on as well to try and meter it out as neatly as possible. But I guess that's ultimately the problem when you've got 220 odd pounds-feet of torque just going through the front wheels. What have we got? Modes. We've got normal, we've got a very slow responding button to change the modes as well, which drives you a bit mad. Normal, sport, and then you've got to press it again. Perso, which is personal or individual, that you get used to. And within that you can set the steering, you can set the throttle map, you can set the diff map. Suspension stays the same. Brake response changes a little bit. There is quite a lot more noise in Perso. It's completely and utterly manufactured, but when you put your foot down, it does make a little bit of a funky noise. It's not intrusive, and you can turn it off. So let's talk about the cabin a bit. It's a funked up version of the Renault 5's cabin. So you've got bespoke seats, which are pretty supportive. You've got this bespoke steering wheel, which does feel pretty sort of meaningful in the hands. Standard issue big TFT screen there, standard issue TFT dials in front of you. If I'm sitting behind me, I literally cannot get my feet underneath the seat. That's absurd considering how big it is.
The A290 GTS has a 52 kilowatt battery that powers a single electric motor at the front that generates 218 bhp and 221 pounds-feet of torque, which is enough to give a 0 to 62 time of 6.4 seconds. It's front-wheel drive, remember, so any more than this would generate traction issues. But then outright performance was never the 290's intended main purpose. Being fun to drive rather than blisteringly fast was always Alpine's main goal with this car, and mostly it has hit the target. If not in the bullseye, then at least somewhere near the centre.
I don't really like this car. I kind of admire it ever so slightly from a distance. The performance is what I describe as chirpy rather than deeply, impressively, savagely rapid, which is too often the case with EVs. It's fast enough without being ridiculously quick. Too many EVs are far too quick for their own good. This one isn't. As a result, it's also not chewing through the range in the way that, say, a Polestar 2 performance pack has on this road doing this sort of driving. The ride is quite fidgety. The steering has too much torque steer. It's a little bit neurotic. I quite like the way the rear end tucks in when you back away from the throttle going into a corner. I also like the fact that you can dial up and dial down the regen with this button on the steering wheel. There's a silly red button on the steering wheel here with the letters 0 and V on it, which I think are for some sort of an overtake button, but you press the red button on the steering wheel and you think some kind of massive pyrotechnic display is going to occur at the front wheels. It doesn't. It just gives you full throttle. I thought that's what your right foot was for. What you might also be noticing is that the ride is quite firm. You've got whopping great big bespoke Michelin Pilot Sport tyres, huge great wheels, and no way of changing the suspension, and the ride as a result is pretty firm. It doesn't feel that heavy on the move, or it doesn't feel that big and heavy on the move until you get in the old car, and then you get back into this and it feels like you're going down in an electric Range Rover that happens to make some silly noises. And although this thing might be the kind of spiritual 2025 successor to a Clio Williams, the difference is absolutely enormous. It tries quite hard in places, and in some places it does quite a good job. The handling balance is quite sweet. The way you can kind of tuck the nose in by lifting off the throttle into corners is ever so slightly reminiscent of the Clio Williams. Does that make it feel a bit like a Clio Williams? Not really. To me, the progress this car represents over the Clio Williams, well, put it this way, it's not very big. Not for an enthusiast. That's all I can say.
So the Alpine is an impressive enough attempt to replicate a real hot hatch in isolation, and it does a pretty good job overall. But what's it like beside the real thing, and how good, or otherwise, is a Clio Williams to drive in 2025?
You just cannot help but smile in this thing. The moment you start to move in it, it just feels so small, so compact. It's done quite a few miles. It's done nearly 100,000 miles this one, but it is absolutely immaculate, mint. Just about everything on it except the engine has been replaced, and the engine's been in and out many times, according to the owner, Glyn, who's very kindly lent it to us to drive today. It's super simple. It's got everything in here that you want and nothing that you don't. The dials are lovely and clear. The seats are lovely. I'd forgotten how good a Clio Williams seat is. It smells a bit ancient in here, as older cars tend to. You can whiff the oil and you can sort of smell the gizzards of the heating system.
The Clio's 2-litre engine produces way less power and torque than the 290's EV powertrain, but its performance is spookily similar in overall terms. And that is because it weighs a mere 981 kilograms, pretty much an entire caterham less than the Alpine. This car is number 425, the very last of the original batch of cars that were produced for the UK market. And it's worth at least as much as the 38 grand Alpine.
So the basic headline statistics, it weighs 981 kilograms as opposed to pretty much 1500 kilograms for the A290. It's got 148 bhp instead of, 217, 218. It's got about 150 pounds-feet of torque as opposed to 220 odd for the A290. But the power to weight ratio of this car, the Clio Williams, is give or take within a horsepower exactly the same as the Alpine A290, 150 bhp per tonne. That's no coincidence. Alpine clearly based that power to weight figure on the power to weight of the Clio Williams, the original Mark I Clio Williams, because they wanted it to be the sort of spiritual successor to this car. But having spent a lot of time in the Alpine and plenty of time in this now, I think the connection it's pretty vague, it's pretty distant. I mean, for a start, the steering is so much sweeter and more honest and pure and how you want steering to be in this car compared with the A290. And I'm not quite sure I understand why Alpine haven't got it better in the A290 when all they'd have to do is go down the road. In this car, the steering on this car is delightful compared with the Alpine, compared with most cars actually. I love the gearbox. There's nothing really amazing about it, but it's just a really nice, old, clean, precise manual gearbox with not a million ratios, 5 to be precise. The recipe is not complex, it's not sophisticated. And the lesson is it doesn't need to be. I'm not just going to sit here and go, look, things aren't anywhere near as good as they were in the old days, blah, blah, blah. That's just cliche and corny. But there are certain things that this car does which the A290 could and should do And I don't understand why they haven't got closer to achieving it. The ride being one of them. This car rides so much better than the A290. And yes, it's lighter. You need a bit of heft. You always need a bit of weight in a car to make it ride properly. Well, this car rides well. The Alpine A290 doesn't. And that is unquestionably a partial result of the fact that the Alpine has got absolutely enormous wheels and tyres on it when it doesn't need them. And this thing has got tiny little wheels and tyres on it. It's also still decently rapid, the Clio Williams. It was never absolutely nutcase fast. It's never that quick in a straight line, purely, just go. Only had 150 horsepower, but you could carry so much speed through corners in a Clio Williams back in the day, and not a lot has changed. And yet it's such a simple, straightforward, easy to understand, completely easy to fall in love with little car. Big engine, little car, big brakes, gearbox off the shelf from the sort of Renault parts catalogue, some decent seats, some decent tuning of the suspension, but still small wheels and tyres. Stick a Formula 1 name on the side of it and then sit back for 2 or 3 decades. Watch most of them get crashed so that the ones that stick around are still become increasingly rare and increasingly expensive. That's what you end up with as a Clio Williams. So there you go. You put these two cars side by side with one another and you go, well, they've both got 150 horsepower per tonne and they both cost approximately 35 grand. Which one do you want? This one, please. Any day of the week. All day long, as they say. The end.
So in conclusion, the answer is yes. Alpine is telling the truth, because the A290 is a thoroughly committed attempt to recapture the spirit of a car like the Clio Williams. But in the end, it's still a pastiche, a contemporary copy of an original. And although it's an Alpine for today and not yesteryear, it also proves, well, just how little progress has been made since the Clio Williams first blew our minds in 1994. In the end, there's only one truly great car here, and it's not the one with the electric powertrain. Progress? I'm not so sure. Thanks for watching. To see more vids like this, please do subscribe to the Intercoolers YouTube channel. So until next time, well, au revoir.